Teen boy was bullied after school, shoved and mocked behind the empty gym where no teachers could hear him. He walked home alone, bruised outside and broken inside, convinced the world didn't care. That night, he said nothing, just tried to forget. But the next morning, the entire neighborhood woke to the thunder of engines. 40 bikers lined up outside his school entrance, arms crossed, helmets off, waiting, and every bully who walked up froze in shock. The amber light of late afternoon filtered through the maple trees lining Oakwood Street, casting long shadows across the quiet suburban sidewalk. It should have been peaceful, the kind of moment that makes you grateful for small town life. But for 16-year-old Marcus Thompson, this walk home had become his daily nightmare. Marcus clutched his worn backpack against his chest like armor, his eyes darting nervously from house to house, hoping against hope that today would be different. His thin frame seemed to shrink even smaller as he quickened his pace, the sound of his sneakers against concrete echoing in the stillness. But hope was a luxury Marcus couldn't afford. Well, look what we have here. The voice cut through the evening air like a blade. Marcus's heart sank as 3 figures emerged from behind a parked SUV, blocking his path home. Tyler Morrison, the ringleader, stood in the center with his trademark smirk, the same cruel expression that had haunted Marcus's dreams for months. Flanked by his 2 loyal followers, Jake and Connor, Tyler represented everything Marcus wasn't: tall, athletic, popular, and merciless. Going somewhere, freak. Tyler's voice dripped with false friendliness, the kind that made Marcus's stomach twist into knots. What happened next was as predictable as it was heartbreaking. Books scattered across the pavement. A torn shirt. Laughter that echoed off the houses while neighbors stayed safely behind their curtains. And when it was over, Marcus walked the final 3 blocks home alone, bruised in ways that went far deeper than skin. Marcus had always been different, and in the cruel ecosystem of Jefferson High School, different meant vulnerable. While other boys his age were obsessing over sports and social media followers, Marcus found solace in books, art, and the quiet corners of the library, where he could disappear into worlds that made more sense than his own. His crime wasn't being mean or hurting anyone. His crime was being kind in a place that mistook kindness for weakness. He helped younger students with their homework. He fed stray cats behind the school cafeteria. He never fought back, never sought revenge, never stooped to their level, and for that, Tyler Morrison's crew had marked him as their favorite target. The bullying had started small snide comments in the hallway, accidental shoulder bumps between classes. But like all cruelty left unchecked, it had grown into something monstrous. Social media became another battlefield where Marcus couldn't escape. Fake profiles spread rumors about him. Humiliating photos taken without his permission circulated through group chats. Even his safe spaces, the library, the art room, the quiet bench where he ate lunch, became hunting grounds for his tormentors. The worst part wasn't the physical pain or even the public humiliation. It was the isolation. Fellow students who might have helped chose to look away, grateful it wasn't happening to them. Teachers who should have intervened somehow always seemed to miss the worst moments. And Marcus, raised to handle his own problems and never burden others, suffered in silence. At home, his mother Sarah noticed the signs: torn clothes explained away as clumsiness, bruises attributed to falls. His son, who once shared everything, now guarding his words like state secrets. She watched her bright, compassionate boy slowly dimming, like a light being turned down day by day, and her heart broke a little more each evening. But Marcus couldn't find the words to explain his daily horror. How do you tell the person who loves you most that you've become the school's favorite victim? How do you admit that the very qualities she raised you to value, kindness, gentleness, empathy, had somehow made you a target? The breaking point came on a Tuesday evening in October, after what Tyler and his friends called their best work yet. They had cornered Marcus in the empty gymnasium after school, destroying his art project, a painting he'd worked on for weeks, while filming his reaction for their entertainment. Marcus had managed to hold himself together until he reached his bedroom. But as he sat on his bed, staring at the shredded remains of his artwork, something inside him finally shattered. The tears came in waves, carrying with them months of suppressed fear, anger, and desperation. Sarah heard the sound no mother should ever hear her child sobbing with a depth of pain that spoke of true hopelessness. She knocked gently on his door, and for the first time in months, Marcus didn't send her away. "Mom," he whispered, his voice barely audible through his tears, "I can't take it any more. I can't." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning that went far beyond typical teenage drama. Sarah held her son as he finally told her everything, every cruel word, every humiliation, every day he'd considered not coming home at all. That night, after Marcus had finally fallen into exhausted sleep, Sarah sat at her kitchen table with her phone in her hands. She scrolled through her contacts until she found a number she hadn't called in years. Her brother Mike had always been different from the rest of the family: leather jacket instead of business suits, motorcycle instead of minivan, and a group of friends who looked intimidating but had hearts bigger than anyone she'd ever known. With trembling fingers, she dialed his number and waited for him to answer. Mike Steele, Thompson, was settling in for a quiet evening when his phone rang. As the president of the Iron Wolves Motorcycle Club, he was used to late night calls about broken-down bikes or members needing help. But his sister's voice, shaking with barely controlled emotion, immediately put him on high alert. "Sarah, what's wrong?" As she told him about Marcus, about the months of bullying and her son's breaking point, Mike felt a familiar fire building in his chest. It was the same protective instinct that had driven him to military service, the same loyalty that had bonded him to his motorcycle brothers, the same sense of justice that made the Iron Wolves more than just a riding club. "Sister," he said quietly, his voice steady as steel, "you should have called me months ago." Within an hour, Mike's phone was buzzing with messages. The Iron Wolves had a code that went deeper than blood: protect those who cannot protect themselves. When one of their own, and Marcus was family, which made him one of their own, was in trouble, the Brotherhood responded without question. By midnight, word had spread through the network. Tom Diesel Rodriguez, a high school counselor by day and road captain by weekend, immediately understood the situation. Maria Phoenix E. Santos, a mother of 3 who worked as a social worker, felt her protective instincts surge. Big Jim Harrison, a grandfather who looked like he could bench press a car but spent his Sundays reading to kids at the library, cracked his knuckles with quiet determination. One by one, they confirmed they would ride at dawn. The Iron Wolves spent the rest of the night preparing. Not weapons or intimidation tactics, that wasn't their way. They prepared their hearts, their presence, and their unwavering commitment to show one scared teenager that he was not alone in this world. Wednesday morning dawned crisp and clear, the kind of October day that makes you believe in new beginnings. Marcus woke with the same knot of dread in his stomach that had become his constant companion. Another day of walking through those school doors, another day of being someone else's entertainment. He barely touched his breakfast, kissed his mother goodbye with sad eyes, and stepped out into the morning air. 3 blocks to school, 3 blocks of vulnerability before he could disappear into the crowd and try to become invisible for another day. But as Marcus reached the corner of Maple and Jefferson, something extraordinary happened. The morning stillness was broken by a sound that seemed to rise from the earth itself, the deep, rhythmic thunder of motorcycle engines. At first distant, then growing stronger, until the very ground beneath Marcus's feet began to vibrate with their power. Marcus stopped walking and turned toward the sound, his eyes widening in disbelief as the first motorcycle appeared around the corner, then another, then 10 more. They kept coming, a steady stream of chrome and steel and leather, until 40 motorcycles formed an incredible procession moving slowly down the street. But they weren't just passing through, they were coming for him. The lead rider raised his hand, and one by one, the engines quieted. Mike Steele, Thompson, removed his helmet and smiled at his nephew with all the warmth and strength that had been missing from Marcus's life for too long. "Morning, Marcus," Mike said simply. "Mind if we walk with you to school today?" What happened next was something that Jefferson High School would talk about for years to come. 40 motorcycle riders, men and women of all ages and backgrounds, dismounted their bikes and began walking alongside one 16-year-old boy. They didn't say much, they didn't need to. Their presence said everything. Tyler Morrison and his crew, who had been waiting near the school entrance for their morning entertainment, stood frozen as this unexpected army approached. But this wasn't an army of violence or intimidation. It was an army of protection, of family, of people who had decided that no child should face their battles alone. As they reached the school grounds, Mike placed a gentle hand on Marcus's shoulder and spoke loud enough for everyone to hear. "Remember, nephew, you never walk alone, not anymore." The transformation was immediate and profound. Word spread through Jefferson High like wildfire. Marcus Thompson had backup now, real backup. The kind that didn't need to threaten or intimidate because their mere existence changed everything. Tyler Morrison, faced with the reality that his favorite victim was no longer defenseless, found his cruelty suddenly lacking its former appeal. It's easy to pick on someone who's alone. It's much harder when you know that 40 people are ready to stand up for them. But the real change happened in Marcus himself. Walking through those school doors surrounded by his extended family had awakened something that months of bullying had nearly destroyed his sense of self-worth. He remembered what his Uncle Mike had always told him. Strength isn't about being the biggest or the loudest. It's about standing up for what's right and protecting those who need protection. The Iron Wolves didn't solve Marcus's problems with violence or threats. They solved them with something far more powerful: unconditional love and the unshakable message that he mattered, that he was valued, that he deserved to walk through this world with dignity. Over the following weeks, other students began to take notice. If Marcus was worth protecting by 40 people who barely knew him, maybe he was worth getting to know. Slowly, carefully, friendships began to form. The boy who had eaten lunch alone for months found himself with companions who appreciated his kindness rather than exploited it. In Tyler Morrison, he learned that cruelty has consequences, even when those consequences come not in the form of revenge, but in the form of people who refuse to let injustice stand unchallenged. Sometimes the most powerful victories aren't won with fists or harsh words. They're won with presence, with loyalty, with the simple but revolutionary act of standing beside someone and saying, "You are not alone." Marcus learned that strength comes in many forms. And sometimes it arrives on 40 motorcycles driven by people who believe that protecting the vulnerable is the highest calling of all. The Iron Wolves learned that their brotherhood extended far beyond weekend rides and club meetings. It extended to every person who needed someone to stand with them against the darkness. And maybe, just maybe, Tyler Morrison learned that being truly strong means using your power to lift others up, not tear them down. If this story reminded you that heroes come in all forms, sometimes wearing leather jackets and riding Harleys, then hit that like button and share it with someone who needs to remember they're not alone. Subscribe for more stories that prove kindness is stronger than cruelty, and let us know in the comments. Who are the people in your life who would ride to your rescue when you need them most? Because in a world that can sometimes feel cold and harsh, we all need our own Iron Wolves, and maybe, just maybe, we can be someone else's.